So I'm inside Maya now. I'm going to start off this training product by showing you some examples of creating low-res real-time assets for your environments and things like that. And then we're going to move on to other more advanced things like sculpting, normal mapping, and stuff like that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up an example scene here that I've provided for us here in this training product. It's called Example Cables. I'm going to open that up and we can see two types of cable objects. The first one here is sort of these draping set of 4 cables that kind of just hang down. This is great for placing around your ceiling and stuff. I'm going to hide that for now. And then we have this cable over here, which is this kind of big, thick, hanging cable. And at the end over here, we can see it. We have these sort of exposed wires down here, sort of like the cable's been cut and the wires are exposed and they've been cut also. Okay? Alright, so let's see how we can create something like that. I'm going to go to the front view here. And I'm going to go to the Create menu. I'm going to create myself an EP Curve tool. I like working with the EP Curve tool. You could use the CV Curve tool if you want, but in this case I'm going to work with this one since it just works out pretty good. And what I want to do is I want to come in here. Right now it's just going to give me a few little problems here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy here. I'm going to hide him. By problems I mean just making it difficult to select what I want to select. Alright, so I have this curve here, which you can see is kind of swervy and just drapes down pretty nicely. But if I go over to, say, a right view, you can see it. All the points are perfectly straight, which obviously is no good. So what you want to do is take some of these points and kind of just shift them around a little bit to randomize this a little bit, so it doesn't look too, too stale, too straight. That doesn't look too great. So you want it to look like this, kind of randomized and natural. Having something that looks natural is very, very important. Alright, so now that the curve is done, what I can do is I can create a piece of geometry. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create a polygon primitive cylinder. Cylinder right now is too high res, so I'm going to go to the options over here. I'm going to make it 6-sided. Remember, this is for a video game. And the radius, I'm going to make the radius thinner. Maybe about something like this will look pretty good. So about 0.1 for the radius is fine. Again, sides 6. Once you're finished with all that stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to face mode, take all these faces and get rid of them. I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to go to modify center pivot. And what I want to do is I want to take this this little guy here and I want to snap it to the curve, or the edge that's right here. See that? Here you have your snapping tools up here. This is more of an advanced tutorial, so I'm not going to be, you notice I don't go over those little simple tools and things like that. So I have these faces here. Right now they're actually, the normals of this are facing upwards, so I need to flip them. And one good thing I like to do is go to my shading options and turn on back face culling. That way I can immediately see, just by looking at an object, I can see which polygons are, or what direction the normals of the polygons are facing. So what I'll do now is I'll go to face mode, select all of these polygons, and I'm going to go over here to face normals and reverse the normals so they're facing the correct way. And then I'm going to go to Extrude Face, and I'm going to go to tool options, make sure my settings are reset. And you can see there's an option for use selected curve for extrusion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the curve, holding out shift of course. I'm going to give this some subdivisions, not too much. Let's try 15 and see how that works. And I'm going to hit apply. When I do that, I'm going to get something that looks like this. And 15 actually looks pretty good. It's not too low res, so it looks nice and curvy, but it's not too high res to the point where it's going to kill my game's performance. So let me close that window, and I'm going to probably optimize this afterwards anyway. Okay. So I want to take these polygons that are down here. Make sure you don't select any that are in the back. It's just these bottom ones. Okay. And what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to go to extrude, and let me make sure I reset my settings right there. And I'm going to hit extrude. It's going to do something like this. And I'm going to go to local mode and scale these down. Now you'll see all the polygons come down together. I don't want that, so I'm going to go over here to the options and I'm going to go to keep faces together off. That way I get something like this. So I'm going to make these pretty small. These will represent little wires at the end that are sticking out. Okay, now to get the wired effect, what we want to do is we want to kind of get these polygons to kind of pull out in kind of a natural type way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to one of these side views. I'm going to the front view in this case, and what I'll do is let me take this guy here. I'm going to delete history. I have a button already set up for that. I'm going to go to the create menu. I'm going to create EP curve tool, and I'm going to create a curve that kind of just flows out like this. Okay. Alright, so there's my curve. Now what I want to do is I want to go back to this view, and right now the pivot point is in the wrong place. You can see it's way up there, and I don't want the pivot point to be up there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the insert key, and actually let me do this. Let me go to modify center pivot so I can move it down here. It's a little bit easier to control. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap it to my curve right there and place it right there at the beginning of the curve. That's essentially what I want to do. And once I do that, it's actually going to be pretty easy. Let me go to shading, and I'm going to turn on wireframe on shaded. It makes it simpler. And I want to take this guy and place him on one of those polygons right there. So maybe that polygon that's right there. Okay. So once you place it right there, you can then rotate this and get this any way you want, basically like that. And now what you can do is you can take this face, select the curve right there, go to the Extrude Face options, and I'm not going to worry about divisions for now. I'm just going to go ahead and extrude it, and then down here my options, I can increase the divisions to as many as I need. So I can do something like this, and I can even go to the taper, and I could taper this down at the end so it kind of gets thin right there, and you get sort of this sort of cable sort of effect. So you could add as many subdivisions as you need. I'm not going to add too many. I think something like 7 is going to work out pretty good, maybe even 6. But I'll probably just stick with 7. 7 looks pretty good. Okay. So what you want to do now is pretty simple. Kind of a rinse and repeat sort of process, if you want to think of it that way. You want to take this curve that we had before. Let me take that curve. Now if I move the curve, what's going to happen is you can see that the geometry reacts. So if you want to change the way the geometry looks, you don't like the way it looks, you can come in here and you can start to adjust and move this curve around, as you can see, because of our modeling history. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this curve and I'm going to make a copy of it and move it over. So essentially what I want to do is this. This is the process. I want to place this curve about right there. Okay. Now I'm going to kind of rotate it. And now you can do the other one, the other polygon. And what you also want to do is take the control vertices and make this look different, because you don't want the curves looking exactly the same, or else your cables or your wires that are sticking out right there are going to look identical, and you probably don't want that. That's not going to look too great. So move this stuff around, get some variation, place the curves, and extrude the polygons and curves. Now that you've seen the process, there's no point in repeating it over and over again. I'm going to basically do this for all of these little faces that I created down here. So there's about a good 6 of them that need to be done. So I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to get that done off camera, and I'll meet you again after we complete this. Alright, so I went ahead and I got that done. It took a few minutes. You could see here I already have this sort of sprayed, sort of cut wire effect going here. I just created a bunch of curves and did what I showed you how to do earlier. So last thing you would probably want to do to this is optimize this mesh a little bit. Right now it's got a few too many subdivisions and edges. So what you want to do basically is identify edge loops and things that you don't really need. So if I go to edge and I select this loop, for example, that loop right there, you can see that that edge loop really doesn't define the object too well. So what I can do is I can just go to delete edge and get rid of that and start to down-res this a little bit. Down here maybe we can get rid of that edge loop right there. So basically geometry that doesn't make a difference, get rid of it, useless geometry. And geometry that does make a difference, that defines curvature and the form and shape of the object, you want to leave that, or add more subdivisions wherever you need it. Okay? So go ahead and get that done. I'm going to say that this is pretty much finished. Finally, I'll just delete modeling history. I'm finished with this, In the next video, I'll show you a different example of modeling real-time assets.